Thank you very much for coming up to see me.
Yeah, well, you're very welcome, John. I mean, thank you for having us. It's, I mean, it's mind-blowing, frankly. So tell us how the archive started. How did your interest in UFOs begin?
Right. When I retired as a police officer in 1994, I shudder to tell people how long ago it was, because time just ticks remorselessly on, doesn't it? But yeah, I had nearly 30 years in the West Midlands Police. And as I always say to people, if I'd been out on the streets walking at night when I was in uniform, and somebody had come over to me and they said, look, I want to report a flying saucer or a UFO or aliens, or even something to do with ghosts, I would have obviously believed that they were suffering from the effects of maybe too much alcohol, or they needed, they needed to be taken to hospital. All of that changed, as I say, when I had a phone call from police officers known to me personally, who said they had a report of a UFO that was seen over the Birmingham city centre as a tadpole-shaped light blue with a blue head moving over at about 6:35 on the 19th of January 1995. And this object then was subsequently seen in Russell, a place called Russell Road on the south of Birmingham, before then being seen over the Sturchley area. Anyway, the police were called and two police officers went out, a policewoman and a policeman. I actually spoke to both those officers, and they saw hovering above trees an elliptical shaped object, which was light blue with a rippling thin red line passing through it, surrounded by a blue field. And then within a few minutes, as the policewoman said to me, I had to pinch myself to actually believe I was seeing this. It then shot off into the sky and disappeared. And subsequently, after thinking somebody was playing a joke on me, because when I had the phone call telling me all about this, you never forget where you are with situations. I was lying on the SETI watching, I think it was an Iraqi pilot chasing a UFO. Before then, I had no interest in UFOs. I didn't really believe they existed. Anyway, as a result of what was told me, I thought, well, hang on a minute, surely these things don't exist. And I hadn't contacted the British Astronomical Association, and I showed you one of the cards there, and contacted the fireball coordinator, and I tell you how it is. His name was Mr. Howard Miles, and Miles, that's a good name actually for somebody that works. So he then discussed it with the president, and then I had a postcard through the post, not in an envelope or anything, advising from the president, I think his name was Mobley, advising me that the fireball coordinator should have nothing to do with any crackpot organisations. Now, whenever somebody does that to me, or somebody, as you probably know yourself, when things like that happen to you, think, well, hang on a minute, I know the officers, I know what they saw, I can't explain it away. So, I've no idea crackpot organisations. I was quite, what would the word be? I was quite, I was annoyed, yeah. But I was puzzled. So I did some research and found out that in that given space of the evening, there were a number of other incidents involving UFOs, one of which took place in a place called Wheatley, Oxfordshire. And this was an ex-school teacher. So I drove down, saw her, and she said to me, I never believed in them before, John. Why should I believe in something that doesn't exist? But what I saw on that evening, which was D-shaped, and it was following the contours of the land, well, what the heck was it? And I said, well, I don't know. And even 30 years later, I cannot give any opinions as to what they are or where they come from, because I don't know. but that's what started me off on this. And then, as we discussed before, I ended up accumulating an awful lot of information, not intentionally, but that's how, I suppose, that's how I was. I was absolutely committed and fascinated by it all, you know, and speaking to so many people that had sightings. So eventually the library began to build up, and then over the years people have given me files.
So talk us through.
Right. Well, where shall I start, really? I started this about 20 odd years ago. As we come in along the right hand side, it's all chronological. We have mentioned about press cuttings. We have press cuttings here. Let's have a look. That should be the 1990. That's for 1 year of press cuttings, you see. So we have press cuttings you can look through, 1997 to 1998. So we have press cuttings there. We have the Burmarsh case, which is that was from 1997. That involved this is the Michael Howard. The UFO that scared Tories. That's from a guy called Chris Rolfe. That's the whole file he sent me, relating to what was seen.
Some people have just given you their own kind of archives of material.
Well, yeah. Well, Chris has given me his stuff, and he was a prolific researcher. I mean, it's like if you want to know where it was, where it took place, who was involved. So that's the Burmarsh. As we walk along, we've got, as I say, the interesting about this is we've got you talk about 1995, that's January. That's February, March, April, August, October. This is all for 95, so that was pretty heavy. Right, this is that's for 94 press cuttings. It's Mr. Nick Pope.
Yeah.
It is a massive. It's perhaps too much stuff, really.
We discovered that when we started researching just for this video. It just seemed overwhelming. Yeah. Once you start digging
well, it is overwhelming, isn't it? But it's all in order. We've got photos. Photos. That's a guy from Stratford. That's when he ended up with a burnt hand.
Oh my God!
Not too far away. This is Brenda Butler in the forest. Rendlesham. That was a lady in Yorkshire. That's what she saw. I met up with representatives of the BBC. Well, on two occasions. The first occasion was actually at Broadhaven, but I'll mention that in a minute. The second one was down in Rendlesham Forest, and I asked the lady, the director, if I could bring some of the files to corroborate what had happened there on that weekend. Don't necessarily prove or authenticate what took place, but the files themselves would show any normal-minded citizen that obviously it wasn't just a one-off. So she initially agreed that was fine. I took half of these files, when I say half, about 6 of the Rendlesham Forest files down with me, and when I got down there I showed them, and she banned me from showing them. So I did an interview walking through the forest with a gentleman, and subsequently I think that film went out. I'm trying to think of the name of the programme, but it was, from what I can see, obviously UFOs, if you take time to research, they are a serious subject. Now, as far as the media and newspapers are concerned, you should temper them with some humour, and you should allow people the options of judging for themselves. based on whether you think it exists or not. And on this occasion, I think it ended up with Keith Lemon, is it?
Right.
On a bicycle on ET going around the moon. So for me, I'm against all that, because for me it is a slur on the characters of so many people. So it takes courage to come forward and tell what you've seen. And isn't it odd there's no UFOs and not on the school curriculum? I've said many times to you, I don't know what they are. I don't know where they come from. But I also was lucky enough, I suppose, to film a UFO on the 27th of December 2000 at about 8 o'clock in the evening over the forest. And what a lot of people seem to forget is that there's little doubt that when the UFO, whatever it was, crashed into the forest, it crashed on the other side of the road and then rose up again, because that was called Area 1. Subsequently, all the trees have been chopped down. Then it rose up again and then landed a short time further, not too far away from where the present UFO is in. The model, I take it you've seen the model.
Yeah.
And then, did you know they took off again and moved over towards the coast? And that was where Colonel Holt ended up following the I think it was a small river or a stream towards the coast. But it's a fascinating place. It's quite eerie, and a lot of things have been photographed in there. I was talking to Brenda Butler the other day, yesterday I think, and she told me, of course, all the trees have come down, and that presence, that feeling is no longer there, I suppose, because they've stripped the landscape, which is a shame.
Yeah.
But there's so many strange things have happened there. Going back to the 1980 case, something must have sparked off. I know that police officers from Hull in Yorkshire went down to see a guy called Colonel Richard Spring, known as Dick to his mates. And Colonel Holt told me that he knew of him, never being able to trace him, but these police officers, senior police officers, went to see Colonel Richard Spring, and obviously brought to his notice something that had happened in Hull. I traced the reports in Hull, and that is another long story which we don't have time for. So something galvanised the officers from Hull to come all the way to Rendlesham. But how would they have known about the Rendlesham incident? Because that was only like 4 or 5 days later. That in itself doesn't make sense. There was, as you know, there's so many servicemen that have been involved in sightings in that forest at that time. People like Jim Beniston, John Burrows, Bastanza, many others, but they've got their own stories to tell, and I can neither say I believe or disbelieve them because I wasn't there.
So is that what you sort of see yourself more as, rather than trying to explain? You're documenting, is that?
Well, I suppose historian would be the right word, wouldn't it? I think it's important that we accumulate this history. That's 1980. So. That's Thetford Forest. Thetford Forest saw quite a lot of stuff. That was photographs a couple sent me. Took 2 photographs. The one below, there's nothing, and the second one, there's something in the window.
Oh.
Oh, wow.
A genuine couple as well. Wow. I can't explain that. That's 1964. They examining a hole in the ground. Lorry driver reported sighting UFO occupants. That was written up. That was the copper when he was young. He had a sighting over Cheltenham of their 3-3.
Oh yeah, look at that.
Wow.
Colchester, yeah.
Wow.
It's a bit like a bottomless pit, but surely we owe it to ourselves that we should, if we're going to conclude anything about this phenomena, we should do our research first, and that's what it's about. I feel that was recovered from a lady, got it? And the thing with that alleged implant, in a nutshell, is that this lady called Elaine Waite. She was living in the London area back in the 1990s. She contacted me and she said that every time I'm going to sneeze, I see a UFO. Well, I thought to myself, thought she perhaps doesn't sound quite right to me, but I went down to see her, and we stood outside in the garden, and you could see all the vapour trails from the aircraft going in and out of London. And she said to me, I think I'm going to sneeze. And I looked up, and there it was. It was this huge light with two lights. It was no aircraft. And then it moved over. And I actually researched and found somebody in that, not too far away from there, that lived in London, that had seen it himself, but he wasn't too happy that I published anything about it. But she told me about when she was a child, she had a lot of sightings, as indeed many people that have close encounters. If you look back, they will have had other sightings in their youth, or their parents would have. It's sort of part of the way it works. And she told me that I think it was about 1996, I've got all the information, it's all published. She felt a sharp pain in her nostril and felt like metal. So she, very, very tiny. If you look at the end of your nail, you'll see that was about the size of it. So she put it in a tissue and she handed it over to me. I put it in a phial of water, and I think I kept that with me for about 20 years. I got it examined by a guy called Professor Lorimer at Manchester University, and he said it was hydrocarbon. It was one of the strangest things he'd ever seen. It looked like a knitting needle with a sort of a curved end.
And it was in her nose.
So I can only say what give you the benefit of my research, in as much that she's a very genuine lady. She's had other sightings, and so I kept it in this file. When I moved here about 5 years ago, I was bringing my files over here, and the file sat in front of me. That's about the size of the file, and with water in it, the screw top. And as I went to reach it, it just disappeared.
It
just disappeared.
In there, or dissolved?
Just disappeared in front of my eyes.
Oh my God.
So I took the bed up. I checked everything, because I thought, I can't believe this has happened. And it's disappeared completely.
Right.
I've never known anything like that.
Yeah.
We've got 1, 2, 3,
Oh yeah,
4 files, yeah.
So are you working on this every single day?
Yeah, but I'm trying to write the books as well. The
Right,
publicity.
of course, yeah.
I mean, I haven't opened this for a bit, but God, that's 1998. That's what I saw from the house where I lived, opposite the house. Quite a long story behind that, but yeah. That's when I had Publicity, you see.
Right.
That is the Publicity folder, but I don't get it anymore.
Oh yeah.
We've got the slides as well. We've got hundreds of bloody slides. Got DVDs.
You've got cassettes and also you've got
Yeah.
audio.
I don't know. And this is Magonia, and this is the probe report.
Okay.
It's worth taking the photo. Radio Times. Is anybody there? That was examines the evidence for UFOs. Patrick Moore on flying saucery. God, what's this? Wow. I did speak to him once,
Oh, Patrick Moore.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
He's a mate of David. Met a David. What was his name? The ex-pilot. Head's going. Anyway, David Bryant. Yeah, he was a mate of his, and he told me that when they went to Warminster, Wiltshire, they didn't see anything of any significance.
Yeah.
But when I spoke to his colleague, the guy that was being with him, he said they saw some quite interesting stuff.
Oh, really?
1944.
Oh, wow.
Oh, this is, okay, these are properly old then.
1944.
So, for instance, where did you get what's in this? You know, all the information.
It just happened, I don't know.
know.
Government records.
Yeah.
Crashed near Roswell, New Mexico, 1947.
Amazing.
You've got this as a
Because
part.
these are original documents. These aren't.
No, they're original, yeah. That's the thing, and people say, why don't you put them on the internet and scan them in? But then, if they're scanned in, how reliable are they?
Yeah.
People could do all sorts with them.
Yeah.
Air Gunners Association, 1944. And that was that smashing bloke he was. Yeah, that was George Bernard Dye. That's George there with his wife. Both passed. He had a spectacular sighting on the way back from France. That's what sort of thing he saw.
It's a bit like banana.
Yeah.
This is genuinely valuable stuff. You know, it's not even if you take the UFO out of it, it's valuable because it's historic. These are historical records, and people you're happy for people to come and visit you here if they.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
We don't, as I say, we don't charge. We just come along. But some of the files are too big, and, and if you open them, they're in danger of all falling out. That was PC Roger Wiley. I knew him and Clifford Waycott. They were the one that chased the Flying Cross back in '67, and we've got his son gave me a load of stuff. The BBC tried to explain it away as being Venus.
Right.
But funny enough, there was at least 30 people saw a UFO on the 24th of October 1967 all over the place, which wasn't Venus.
Right. Yeah.
So, but it's history. And,
It's history. It's history. However you look at it, it's historical.
Yeah.
Amazing.
And I can tell you, and of course, I've met people over the years that have told me about ports and things turning up and things disappearing. So I can't offer you any other explanation. But that is a genuine lady. It's a genuine alleged implant. I tried to get some publicity on it at the time, and nobody was interested. And people have nobody's ever contacted me about those exposure books, and said, "What on earth is that alien carrying?" So that in itself doesn't dictate really the, if you like, the level of interest by our many so-called enthusiasts. I mean, that is the truth of the matter.
Yeah.
But I've come across Brenda Butler has got this. She's got an implant. I've come across the people that have got. In fact, the gentleman last week that I interviewed he didn't give it me. I photographed it. It was a small piece of like black foam about the size of his small fingernail, and that was ejected out of it.
It's always up them.
So there's a nose.
Yeah.
Do you think that's why the lady sneezed?
Yes.
So something was activated
That's
within
right.
the implant.
That's right. Yeah.
When some part of her could sense the presence of the UFO.
Well,
so she'd sneeze.
that would be as an after effect of the UFO. But how do we know? I mean, when I first started this, I didn't believe. When I first started this, I accepted quickly that UFOs exist, whatever shape they were, and predominantly over the in the passage of time, what you're talking about, 60, 70 years, most of them have been. I've got to be careful here. We say triangular because a lot of people think because they're triangular that they're top secret aircraft and technology that we're not supposed to know about. But that doesn't make sense because in the early days, if you go back to the Victorian times, people reported seeing three small balls of light in the sky, 1, 2 and 3, which you could say made a triangle. But then it depends on the way that they move because they might look differently from another angle. But the archives are flooded with those from the 1980s onwards. So, and there's certainly, if you bear in mind that the pilots saw them in the Second World War, that they're certainly not, I don't think they're top secret technology at all. But on occasion, particularly during peaks of high activity, you know, we talked about the 60s to 70s and the 90s. Will it, I think the $64 million question is, when will it return? And I have a terrible feeling it's going to return about 2054. Well, sadly, I mean, you young guys might be here, but...
What's your reason for saying 2054?
Well,
Is
because
it just
more or less,
calculating
well,
the
it
gap?
actually started. When we say started, did it ever start? Was it with us all the time?
Yeah, that's the
I mean,
question.
what about the medieval ages when the witches saw things in the sky, and they were
People
burnt?
would just say it was the devil,
There was the
witches,
devil, and he'd be burnt at the stake.
or
And
ghosts.
I'm pretty sure. And I remember, well, let's say an American researcher from a few years ago. What he did, and you don't see it with these sighting reports that I've got. He took their date of birth, and he was able to forecast 99% of people that had sightings. Their dates of birth could be through their mother and grandmother. Invariably, those dates would always be June or July, back to 47, June or July. Well, does that suggest anything about Roswell or what happened there? I don't know, but certainly we do have sightings before that. In fact, we've got sightings of 1290. You know, unfortunately, I never actually interviewed the people there. Yeah, I know.
That'd be a challenge.
That'd be a challenge. But I might have to hand it over to you. Okay. But it is a tremendous subject. It's a very deep subject. There's an awful lot of information in it. And as I say, we're going back to Rendlesham, sorry. Yeah, Rendlesham, the amount of things that I've witnessed down there and photographed. Brenda's photographed some tremendous stuff. I think it was David Boyle that used to run the UFO, sorry, the was it Doctor Who archives in Blackpool?
Oh, right. Oh, I went there many years ago as a kid. Yeah.
Well, David was down in the forest. He did a talk in Clacton. I was down at the talk, and then he went to the forest, and he actually, you know, there's all sorts of strange shapes in the forest, and a friend of mine, you would say some of the stuff looks even humanoid. But he stood at the top of a hill, which was an ancient barrow all those years ago. Because the first thought the first thought that came into my mind when I looked at Rendlesham Forest was whether there are any ancient sites there, and for the life of me I couldn't find any. But then there are ancient barrows there, you know. And anyway, he stood at the top of one, which wasn't very tall, and he did this, and people took photographs, and all of a sudden this huge swirling mass appeared over his head. Okay, it could have been missed, but it wasn't there a second before he put his arms up, so he reckoned he could call this stuff in.
Based upon the fact that these things
Yeah.
go back thousands of years, maybe.
Yeah, it's like Winston Churchill said in 1940, he stopped the Allied pilots from releasing details of their sightings to the press or leaking it, because he said it would affect religion. Well, of course it would affect religion. That is probably what we're up against a bit.
It calls so much into question that once these...
Well, that's right, yeah. But
So with that in mind, I mean, you say all you know for definite is that these things exist and that they're real. But if you had to kind of put using all the materials in your archive, if you had to make a call and say, this is what they are, whether they're from outer space, interdimensional, or they're from something that's naturally occurring on Earth? What would you?
Well, I would go for the interdimensional stuff. I don't think it's a natural occurrence, because if it's a natural occurrence, okay, if it's a natural occurrence, I mean, you're sitting there, do you mean to sit there and say to me, which you're not, but that, you know, hang on a minute, the governments must have spent millions. Look, we were discussing what was happening in Washington before. Well, these black budgets, what they must be spending billions on what? Because the bloody things don't exist, they tell us. So what are they spending all this money on? You know, but I don't think it's extraterrestrial. The fact that the bottom line is that if you get close to one of these things, it does not necessarily have to be that close. You could be 2 miles away and see it in the sky. You will get affected or by the fact that you're, first of all, seeing something you may not have seen before. And of course, it raises great excitement, exhilaration, in question what you're looking at. And sometimes there's a price to pay. I've met people that have developed powers of healing after and had a great life. I've met people that have been healed. I've also met people that have had some terrible things happen to them following that close encounter involving all sorts of complaints. And that is why I'm currently writing a book on the people that I've met over the years that have had these medical problems, because something physical is interacting, surely.
But you don't think they're aggressive? Then it's not an intentional.
No, we actually we chatted about this before. If they wanted to be aggressive, well, they could probably destroy us. There was one incident back in Warminster, Wiltshire, many years ago. I spoke to the gentleman's wife, and what had happened back in the 70s, they were returning home and they stopped because they saw this triangular, when they say triangular UFO, triangular UFO is what they said, and it was in a field, and it was on a field, and in Wiltshire, Warminster, it's a lot of flint, isn't there? And then after the object had disappeared, they reported it. And subsequently, I've got the guy, a researcher went along and took samples, and he found out that that ground had been heated up. I think it was a terrific temperature, more or less the same as, unfortunately, when we get cremated. So what the hell was that all about? And there was all the marks. And anyway, the lady said that right from that day onwards to the day before he died, he had these marks all over his chest, and nobody could explain, or he had nobody could sort them out for him. And he's not the only one. So many others I've met have had these things happen to them, and you know, there is a physical or a psychological price to pay. But in as much that aggressive, I don't think we're talking about something completely different from our conceptions of what aliens are and where they come from. And so, but it's, for me, it's a never-ending story, really, and a never-ending voyage. I thoroughly enjoy doing what I'm doing, talking to people, and because so many people I think first time ever a Catholic priest contacted me a few days.
Wow.
And he said he'd seen this thing in 1987, and he wondered if I'd got any other information. So let's imagine you're a Catholic priest. There's a cat just going by. Is that lucky? A black cat, see? But he said, from his point of view, he's probably seen this thing when he was a kid. So many others thought, what the hell is that? And perhaps he's obviously seen something about the archives. And so I spoke to him, but he was on his way to communion. He hadn't rang me back, so would he fit into the category of having the cold feet like people do? Or I will try him again later. Yeah. But in a way, I feel, for the first time ever, I feel, how do I go on about this with a Catholic priest? I mean, one has to bear in mind what you're going to say, really, because I mean, I'm not anti-religious at all. I'm brought up as in Church of England, but there is good and there is bad in this world, and maybe some of the energies are good and some are bad. But sometimes you're better off not getting involved in this business because it's well, it is formidable, shall we say. But also it's nice to allay other people's fears and help people out there, because most of the time they end up with something like, I've reported this to you because I'm frightened to mention it because people don't believe me. It's because they don't know. And that's one of the reasons why I'm thwarted in a lot of ways about getting this stuff out. And it's why, you guys come here today can help me, but also help yourself. Yeah. Because we have every right as human beings to know about this, good or bad, because we've always, if we hadn't started off all those thousands of years ago, we'd still be living in caves, wouldn't we? So
do you, but with that in mind, do you feel things are changing slightly? We've got these congressional hearings in America. Do you feel the topic's been taken with more credibility now, or are we approaching a change?
Well, but I've spoken to some people that I haven't viewed the the film of that hearing, but as I understand it, the people involved were skeptics. As I understand it, I'm not necessarily saying that is the case. I have actually in the last few days contacted a couple of guys that were on there, nothing else. Okay, so you as the government say to me as a citizen, yeah, we believe in UFOs and we spent a lot of money investigating and researching it. So I say to you, okay then, President Trump, what are they? And what do you say?
Can't tell you.
And that's right. And what's their agenda? You can't tell me. And where are they from? You can't tell me. And it's probably because you don't bloody well know. There you go. That's the problem. So, I mean, back in the 1990s and the 2000s, early 2000s, each year the Public Records Office declassified files, okay? And there's always that intense excitement by the media and the press, followed by all sorts of crazy stuff on the front of newspapers. And you've seen some of those yourself, where people make the giant leap for mankind and they just achieve nothing. And so that always galvanized the interest of there. But within a few days, that was completely lost by other things that had happened. And many of those reports they were silly. Some of the reports were daft. Over the years, I have not come across any person I've regarded who's suffering from any mental psychiatric problems, who wishes to make money out of it. I've met thousands of people, and all they do is report what they've seen, photograph what they've seen, or film what they've seen, and that they, like me, would like to know what it is and where it comes from. It certainly, as we discussed before, is likely to be indigenous to the planet, isn't it? And it's been here a long time. But so that leads you to think, who came first, them or us? I've got a horrible feeling they came first. We came second. So that means we are the aliens. Yeah. We're not doing a very good job of it, are we? No.
So how do you feel about the theory that these unexplained beings, is that a word? These beings perhaps are living within the earth, so beneath the earth?
Well, I can't really, I don't really know. For me, it's likely that I've taken photographs of objects over the Wiltshire area. I spent an awful lot of time down in Wiltshire. And it's almost as if half of the object is a cigar-shaped object, for example, coming over one of the East Kennet Barrow next to Silbury Hill, almost as if it was coming into not coming into our sky, but coming into our dimension, if you like. So for me,
so is it more? Sorry, yeah, pass that to you. So are you feeling more that they are part of our Earth, but in a different dimension?
Yes.
So they slip through.
That's right.
Into
that's
our
right.
reality.
I'm sure that is what is happening, and they've been doing it for probably millions of years. That's what appears to be the truth of the matter. And although most of us talk about, and I've interviewed many people that have had abduction experiences. I'm sure these people are genuine. There's no doubt about that in my mind. They are genuine people. They've got marks, they've got injuries to show. So, and of course, that's not forgetting the fact that on occasions, when on at least 3 or 4 occasions, I've interviewed people who've gone to a doctor. I'm digressing slightly here, but an ex police officer who was a serving police officer at the time back in the Lincolnshire area. He was out fishing one day, and he just as he was about to throw the rod in, this object, it probably wasn't Lincolnshire, I think it was Leicestershire, Stanwick Lakes was where it was, and this thing appeared above the lake. He didn't know what the hell. I've never seen anything like this before in my life. My God, what do I do? So he went to move the rod, and this thing then just disappeared. And he looked down, and he'd got some maggots on the floor, which had been put on the hook for the fishing rod, and they'd actually pupated. They take 24 hours to pupate. They'd done that in a few minutes. He then reported. So
something had accelerated.
Yes, that's right. That's right. Yeah. Now he, in fact, reported to a guy called Johnny Jenkins from Scotland, who's done quite a lot of research. A smashing bloke, piano tuner, lovely guy I met. So John's done a lot of research into it. But going back to this gentleman, this copper, he was then pestered by other. He didn't report it to anybody. No way was he going to report it. But he was then plagued by other coppers stopping him and asking him for his driving license. And I think that was probably because somebody flagged it up. They flagged him up on the computer, and then he, as I say, what happened? I think what happened next. He then moved to Bognor Regis, but just before he moved to Bognor Regis, he'd been to the doctors. That's right, he had an MRI scan, and they were confused about something that was turning up on the scan. And he went to get a copy of the scan, and they said, "We've lost your records." And then just before he went to Bognor Regis, he happened to see the receptionist from the doctor's practice that had retired. And he said, "It's funny, I what happened to my records?" And she said, "You can't tell anyone that I've told you this." Obviously, I wouldn't give her name, but she said 2 men came in one day, spoke to the doctor, and removed your records. Now, that's not the first. Many other times it's happened. So, it's...
So you do think the government know more than they're letting on, and that they are...
Well, of course they do. Yeah, crikey, that's I mean, that's not just one-offs. That's happened quite a few times. And where records, another one was a lorry driver. I've got it all. I can only remember taking it from a memory. A lorry driver up, I think it was the M6. And as a result, he had a bit of an accident, and he had to go into hospital. And his records went missing as well. Well, I don't know. I can't get my head around it, but it does happen. All I can tell you is the truth of what people have told me, and none of them elaborate or make up fairy tales. This is what has happened. So,
have you spoken to anyone who has told you information from within the government or agencies like that? Have you, whistleblowers, I guess you'd call them, or do you mainly speak to kind of eyewitnesses?
Well, I have spoken to a so-called couple of whistleblowers, and I'm a bit sceptic, I'm going to be honest, of whistleblowers and people that come forward and tell me bizarre stories. If I can meet somebody in person, that's what it's about, isn't it? And it's about trust. So yeah, I've I've been in contact with some people, but I don't know what to make of it. It's, I mean I showed you that newspaper cutting with the UFO. The king flew a UFO. There's no evidence of that at all, and one of the reasons why there's no evidence of it is that I've actually conducted my own research into it, spoken to the informant that lives in Canada, and have some reservations that I don't think the king flew a UFO at all. He probably flew a top secret helicopter or something. I don't know, but certainly my gut tells me something. But it's just that why is it that things like that continue to attract the media? Because it's entertainment. A chap I knew for one of the Nationals, he was actually involved in UFO research in the 80s. Mike somebody, and I said, I said, Mike, why is it I can't get any publicity? And he said, simply because they don't want anything that can concern the reader or frighten the reader. They want something to entertain. And again, look, on that television behind you, which I do enjoy. I mean, I enjoy watching the soaps, not ashamed to admit that. And in fact, Liam Fox, who's he was Dan in Emmerdale, and he's now does a lot for Paranormal. He's doing he's into pantomime now. He's offered. I invited him to do the foreword for the next book, and he's agreed. Oddly enough, I met his then wife at the time at Hull, Kerry, his stage wife, and she was interested in. I mean, most people are interested in the subject, but they're not aware how intense it is, and they're not aware of just how many people have seen UFOs, and they are not aware of just how many reports there was. You've seen yourself in a given month, you can have sort of 300 or 400 sightings. But if that was happening now in this country, I don't know. And then I'm again thinking, what comes into my head is the Gatwick in volume 2 of the police. I think this was this one here. I wrote up about the Gatwick incident, and remember that was a few years ago now.
Yeah.
When they attributed the cause of what was happening to a couple that were taking their what do you call it, the drone out. And I've established in that book that it was nothing to do with the drone. I have other reports of UFOs near Gatwick, because it's near a place called Pound Hill. It's an ancient site there, and I have reports going back. I sent all these to the newspaper and wasn't acknowledged at all. Subsequently, the couple that were arrested and kept in custody overnight, according to the newspapers, were given £200,000. Now, I don't know what about you and me, but I wouldn't mind spending a night in the Nick and getting £200,000 the next day.
Yeah.
And all of that apparently came down from a member of the Parliament. I didn't put his details out there. At the end of the day, I can only give the truth and the evidence. And he said something like to the Prime Minister, God's sake, tell him it was a drone, because it's costing us millions, this is. And that's how it works. Yeah. And but when I cannot believe the amount of rubbish on the television, where every subject is brought into focus on the TV, but when it comes to UFOs, it's something of embarrassment. They don't want to know. So why is that then?
You just have to look at your archive and see the thousands of people. They can't all be fantasists. They can't all be crazy. They can't all be making it up.
They're not. No, they're just merely telling us how it was. I remember a guy I got to know lived up in Yorkshire, Flight Lieutenant James Salandin. What a nice bug. He served in the Second World War as a Spitfire pilot. He was over South End Way in October 1954. And this, I think there's a picture of it on there. I'll show you in a minute. And this golden shaped object appeared in front of him, and he went when he was obviously worried, never seen anything like that in his life, not even when he was in the Second World War. And he told the intelligence officer, who was a guy called Derek Dempster that I wrote to many years ago, and Derek Dempster didn't treat it with ridiculousness. He said, "Oh, I'm very interested, James, thank you." And he said, "I'll report it to King Philip's secretary," which he did. I think it was Brigadier, I think Sir Henry Chinnery was the guy's name, reported to him. And people have a go at the King and Prince Philip, well, Prince Philip particularly, because of his interest in UFOs. Well, of course he was interested in UFOs because Lord Louis Mountbatten was the captain of HMS Kelly in the Second World War. And my ex-father-in-law, Ted West, served on HMS Kelly. And after HMS Kelly had gone down, as I say, fortunately some of them survived. My information is that Lord Louis Mountbatten, who had I don't know if you know about the sighting at Broadlands, when one of the guys there, a boat called Briggs, reported an object that had landed. Now, whether there's any whether that's real or not, I don't know, but that was reported to. But I do know from other sources that that Lord Louis Mountbatten was interested in the subject. And I've got to say to you, everybody is probably interested in it, but they daren't say anything publicly, which is ridiculous, because this stuff has been seen. It's best swept under the carpet, isn't it? UFOs in reality. That's Randall Jones Pugh. He was a vet, worked for Bufora. That's Dawn, my partner at the time. But he said he burnt all his files.
Oh wow!
He said it was demonic. Probably right.
You think he's right?
Yeah.
What? Okay.
Explain
what makes you say that?
Yeah.
Because so many people have. Lord Hill Norton thought it was demonic. I've met so many people that think it was demonic. But demonic is, what does that conjure up though? If it was rephrased as paranormal or evil or bad or what, you could accept it, but demonic.
But what are their reasons for saying it? Is it because people afterwards don't feel well, or
because some of the sightings are paranormal.
Right.
Are things appearing that shouldn't appear. That reminds me, when the BBC interviewed me at the 40th anniversary, and I went there and showed them all of this, and they filmed me. Guess what? They contacted me to say they couldn't use the film.
Why does that keep
Because
happening?
somebody's face was on it and complained, which is absolute rubbish.
Oh, it's ridiculous.
It is rubbish, yeah. So, Thornhill Road, Washwood Heath, in the 1970s, the police and the army were involved with stones. Apports of stones were come flying down on these three houses.
Oh, you mentioned this as well earlier. Yeah.
Yeah, they came down and they spent 2 years trying to determine where these stones were coming from. They even marked the stones. That didn't make any difference. They flew up and come back down again.
Yeah.
And the guy on the left-hand side of the houses, he was on TV, he'd got a steel helmet, because the bloody thing was coming down like rain. And funny enough, the chief inspector from one of the, I think it was in Bromford police station, he lived near there. But the police couldn't sort it out at all. I've got all the statements from the police officers that were there, and there was weird things happening there. And anyway, when I went to the house many years ago and spoke to the lady in the house, who was very helpful, she obviously couldn't fathom out why it happened. But the back garden, what had happened, the paving slabs were from a cemetery.
Wow.
Some of them were the headstones. So when you start to play about with things like that, you're why though?
Yeah.
You're invoking, you're causing something to happen.
That's what you mean when you say demonic. Yeah.
Well, that's what I said. It's like a lady you might want to interview at some stage, Maria Wheatley, who's an expert on Avebury, Stonehenge,
really?
done it all her life, yeah. And she said to me, we were talking about the stones, and she said the scientists have conducted tests on the stones, and they will give off energy at certain times of the year.
No way.
And she thought like I did, that perhaps the energy comes from us, comes from whoever created that stone.
Right.
Yeah, the energy is coming off and it's going into the stone, and maybe that's got something to do with it. But it's fascinating subject. But Avebury, there's been quite a lot happening over there. One guy, I met an ex-police officer, was on his way home, and something shot over the top of the stones. So he continued on his way into Gloucestershire, and the next thing you know, he saw the flashing lights behind him and pulled up, and these two American security police officers got out, and they said to him, "Did you see that over the stones?" And he said, yeah. I said it came. And they said, "No, you didn't.
Right.
You did not see it." He said, "Okay, I didn't see it." When he got back home, he contacted the Air Force Base, the United States Air Force Base, spoke to the commander there, the bloke in charge, and he apologised, and he said, "I'm sorry, but we shouldn't have pulled you up."
Yeah.
Anyway, the bloke's van that he used, the top of the roof was all burnt.
No way.
So, well, where did that come from? And then about 2 months later, he was at home, and there was some knock on the door. Went to the door, something knocked him out completely. Yeah.
And he opened the door.
Yeah, something knocked him out completely. His wife rushed him to hospital, and he just told him he fell over. Wow. He couldn't say that.
Yeah.
So
there's so many.
There's so
things
many.
Like
When you look at one or two as an individual, you think, not sure about that, or maybe. But when you look at the
Thousands,
accumulated number of mysterious phenomena that take place all over the world and continue to do so.
Yeah. You've got to say there's something.
Well, there is something, but do we actually really want to know? I know you might think yes, but it might change our lives, as I said before, because it means that we're not on our own.